All right, the Kink Williams BMX bike in 2025 is a $900 BMX bike with 4 pegs, 4 hub guards, and a few pro level parts. It's a pretty expensive bike, but we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about it, see if this is a good option. Okay, so coming over here to the screen share Brantmore style, we got the $900 Kink Williams, and we've got some geometries here. Okay, but first let's take a look at this bike. It is beautiful. We've got the bash guard on the sprocket. I love this color. We've got the cinema seat post. We've got some handlebars, obviously. We've got a nice set of tires. This is a nice bike. Like, I do like the Kink Williams. It's a little bit on the expensive end, but they've brought it down. When they initially put out the 2023 line, this was a $1,000 bike, and now they've brought it down to $900, so I'm definitely happy to see that. But it does look nice. Like, you cannot deny this is a nice looking bike. Okay, 21-inch top tube. All right, and what does that mean? Well, 21-inch top tube means that it is about 21 inches from here to here. So 21 inches, and that means that it's going to be best for riders who are over 6 foot. I'd say right at 6 foot though. Like, you know, you could be right around there. 5'9", probably too small, but 5'10", 11, 12. I mean, 12 would be 6 foot, but right around there. If you're this height, this is a good bike for you, okay? It's a pretty big top tube, so you've got to be a taller rider to be able to maneuver this thing. The other geometries just talk about how responsive or how the bike is going to feel. So we've got a 12.75 inch chainstay. We've got a 75-degree head tube angle. We've got a 30 millimeter fork offset. And so what that means, what those numbers mean, is we've got mellow over here and we've got responsive over here, okay? And the Kink Williams is going to sit at a very responsive spot, very responsive. This 9-inch stand, so standover height's right here. This is 9 inches. That's pretty standard. Chainstay length is 12.75. This is pretty mellow. Head tube angle is 75.5. This is pretty responsive. Oh, I meant responsive. I said mellow here. That's pretty responsive. This is pretty responsive. 30 millimeter fork offset's about average. Okay, but because of that, it is a pretty responsive feeling bike. It's going to be pretty snappy. It's going to pull back into manuals easily. Overall, it's going to feel responsive. Okay, good for technical street riding, good for some technical park riding. Not so good on the dirt jumps, but not terrible. All right, so that's how the bike's going to feel, but let's talk about these parts on there. One of the most confusing things is when you look at the parts on the bike, you're like, hey, is this good or is this bad? Like, what does that mean? Because there's a lot of stuff on there and it's a little bit confusing. So I'm going to explain it to you. The first thing I need to explain to you is the frame. Kink Williams stock. Good job, Kink. God damn. All right, I'm happy about that. I'm very happy about that because like I talked about earlier with the downside is, like, this is something. I live in the ghetto. Oh, you can't. There's a car alarm going off. Anyway, this is something that happened last year, a few years ago, is like Kink would put on the info here like, hey, this is a Kink Williams 100% chromoly. And they didn't distinguish whether this was the Kink Williams frame that cost $400 on its own, right? Is it the Kink Williams frame or is it a stock frame? And it is a stock frame. Like, I got into it with some of my followers. I'm like, yo, this is not the aftermarket frame. I'm telling you. They're like, yes, it is. And I'm like, email Kink. And they did. And guess what? It's not the aftermarket frame. So I'm really glad that they distinguished that, because here's the deal. If you're buying a We the People Envy, if you're buying a Sunday Soundwave or a Sunday Street Sweeper, if you're buying any of those bikes are expensive, right? Like over $1,000, except the Street Sweeper, over $1,000 on these other bikes. They have the aftermarket frame. And so when I draw out the qualities, I'll talk about the rest of the stuff first, but when I draw out the qualities, you'll start to understand why that's such a big deal to have, like, an aftermarket frame versus a normal frame. There's just more love that goes into it. It's usually heat treated, it's usually double butted, it might use Senko chromoly tubing versus normal chromoly. Like, there's just steps of quality that go into it that make it more expensive and more durable. Double or chromoly is good, but if you can afford aftermarket chromoly, much better. All right, so just keep that in mind. But here, let's go back over the rest of it. I just wanted to touch on that. It's like, yo, that's good that they're distinguishing that. Okay. Forks, Kink Origin, aftermarket, 1.5 piece steer tube, full chromoly. Kink Williams aftermarket bars. We've got the Kink Ridge 3-piece cranks. We've got the double wall Cinema 444 rims. That's awesome. We've got Cinema Williams tires. We've got a Sync half-link chain. Love that. And Cinema free toaster, Cinema sealed bolt-in hub with hub guards on this. Okay, so overall, you're getting a lot of good stuff. The only drawback that I would say for a pro level bike is that this is not the aftermarket frame. But again, it's really not the end of the world. So here's what I wanted to break down is like you've got high tensile steel all the way over here, like the Kink curb, and then you've got aftermarket chromoly all the way over here. This is way better than normal chromoly than anything else, all right? The Kink Williams frame sits right here. The handlebars are aftermarket chromoly. The forks, I don't think the Origin forks, I've got to double check actually. I think the Origin forks are just forks that they made for the Williams because they're not fully aftermarket. So that's one fun fact. Like they're pretty good forks, but they're not the same level of quality as like the Stoic forks or those aftermarket forks. But anyway, frame, bars, forks, cranks are right here. We've got a half-link chain, which is much better than a 410 chain that you're going to find on most bikes, so that's good. We've got double wall 444 rims. That's what single wall looks like. Crap. That's what double wall looks like with those chambers, man. And then 444 rims are even better than like the Mission Mylar rims. So that's good. We've got a lot of good stuff here. The only thing that I would like to see on this bike is moving these chromoly parts over here to aftermarket chromoly. But you can't have everything. And for $900, like, it's a little bit on the high end, to be honest, because you've got, like, I don't know, you spend $300 more, you get full aftermarket everything on, like, the Envy or on the We the People Soundwave. But if you want to save that money and get kind of a pro level bike, I still wouldn't quite classify this as a pro level bike. You can get a kind of pro level bike for $900. Like, it's good. I'm not saying this is a bad quality bike. I'm just trying to speak to the quality to price ratio. And like, here's something that kind of bamboozles me is the Street Sweeper, I think. Let me check. It's like $800. This is a special offer on Dan's Comp, but so $829 for the Street Sweeper. So it's cheaper. Okay, stay with me, guys. It's cheaper than the Kink Williams, and this is the aftermarket Street Sweeper frame. It's got hook off. Pop-ups piss me off. I will never ever put a pop-up on one of my websites ever. All right. Anyway, bars. So what Sunday did with this is a little different. They put a high-end aftermarket frame and then normal chromoly forks and bars, and it's still cheaper than the Kink bike. So I don't know. I have kind of mixed feelings about that. Like the Williams, kind of overpriced for what it is, but it's not bad, and it is a clean-looking bike, and it's not bad quality. It's just a little bit expensive for $800, $850. It's more in the ballpark of what you would expect to get. Like the Sabrosa Novus is way out in left field. Like they're goofy with the price they put on the Novus. They priced it at like a Sunday Street Sweeper, and it is a Williams quality bike, right? So Kink is doing okay, but they could bring it down a little bit and still make some money on it, I guess is what I'm getting at. But that's my thought on the Kink Williams. And also, well, yeah, I guess that's my thought on the Kink Williams. Oh, and if you want me to find 3 bikes that are perfect for you, click the link, free bike recommendation. I'll find 3 perfect bikes. I'll send it to you, and you will never have to worry about watching another bike review.